You and your friend Pedro decided to take a short trip to escape the routine and enjoy a weekend in a secluded mountain chalet. The plan was simple. Drive to the cabin, relax, and enjoy the peace of nature. The path is long, and you are happy to finally reach your destination. What we didn't know was that this trip would turn into something that no one of us could have imagined. It's a clear night and the full moon illuminates the path while the radio plays soft music. The road is deserted and only the light of the car's headlights breaks the darkness that surrounds it. Pedro is at your side, fighting against his dog, and you are focused on driving. The tranquility is almost perfect and you feel relaxed, believing that the worst thing ever happened. Then, suddenly, something interrupts this serenity. You see a figure in the middle of the road, a few meters further along. Her headlights illuminate a young woman in a white shirt who walks slowly, as if in a trance. She doesn't seem to care about the car approaching her and her heart speeds up. Without thinking, you brake sharply, feeling like the car is stopping just a few meters away from you. The chirping of tires on the deserted road is the only noise that breaks the silence of the night. Pedro wakes up scared, with his eyes wide open due to confusion and fear. They observe the young woman, who continues walking slowly, as if nothing. She seems to be in a completely different world, in the danger she is in. Suddenly, she turns her head and her eyes, which should have been normal, seem empty, like dark glasses at night. The silence in the car's cabin is palpable when it starts to approach. Her hand stretches out to the auto and feels an escalofrio running through your column while she drags her fingers across the glass. The sound of her touch is soft, almost like a whisper in the night. It's a sound that should be barely perceptible, but you feel it as if it were resonating in your eyes. Fear takes over you and your survival instinct activates. Without thinking, you accelerate. The car gains speed and the young man quickly disappears into the darkness behind you. Her heart still beats fast and the radio, which before seemed relaxing, is now just a cool sound. The sensation that something is not going well continues to float in the air, like an invisible cloud of tension. Pedro and you exchange nervous glances, without knowing what to decide. The road back to the chalet is silent, everyone lost in their own thoughts. But the feeling that something is wrong remains with you, as if that brother was still there, pressed against the glass, and the young man was still wandering down the street, waiting for someone to do something. The rest of the trip takes place in silence, and the story of the young man in the white shirt becomes a constant reminder that, no matter how normal things seem, sometimes darkness hides mysteries that should never be discovered. When you finally arrive at the cabin, the comfort of your home is only a temporary relief, and the memory of that mysterious figure continues to torment your thoughts even after the night has passed. And then, the trip that began as a simple escape from routine became a nightmare that both of them will never forget. A dark reminder that the unknown could manifest itself in the most unexpected ways. I hope you liked the story, because the second story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories. It was a peaceful night in West Virginia and Tom enjoyed the freedom of the road. The sky was open and starry, and the full moon cast a soft light over the landscape, creating an atmosphere of calm and peace. After hours of driving along the winding road, he began to feel tired and in need of a rest. With that in mind, he decided to stop at a separate rest area that had appeared on his GPS. When he arrived, Tom noticed that the rest area seemed almost surreal in its tranquility. The parking lot was mostly empty, with just a few cars parked in rows very close together. A small building with a discreet sign indicating bath was the only visible point of reference. Faint lights gathered across the parking lot, projecting a yellow glow that created long, distorted shadows on the ground. Tom parked his car near the building and got out, feeling the cold of the night on his skin. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional sound of grills and the whisper of wind in the surrounding trees. There was something almost oppressive in the silence, a feeling that the night was waiting for something. Tom tried to let go of that sensation and walked towards the bathroom, his tired mind trying to concentrate on the immediate need. The bathroom was dull and dark, with only a few faint firecrackers illuminating the cubicles and washrooms. Tom washed his hands with a little cold water, trying to refresh himself. The faint light was reflected in the mirror, creating an effect of wavy and blurred shadows. As he dried up, he felt a scald that he couldn't explain, the feeling that something was watching him. He turned to go. While he looked away, he noticed two men again. Now they were closer to the bathroom building. Their dark silhouettes slowly moved between the shadows. They were dressed in dark leather jackets and seemed to be talking between them, but their movements were extraordinarily synchronized, almost as if they were rehearsing. Tom decided that the best thing was to get out of there. The feeling of discomfort was increasing, and he couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. Hurrying up, he returned to the car. The panic started to settle on his chest while he was looking for the key in his pocket. The faint lights of the parking lot cast shadows that seemed to move and twist as if they had a life of their own. Finally, Tom managed to start the car and quickly reverse, leaving the parking lot with a feeling of relief mixed with anxiety. But while he was still, he couldn't help but feel that something was following him. When looking in the rearview mirror, he only saw the darkness of the road, but his mind was full of unsettling images. The shadows of the trees and the curves of the road seemed to move in such a way that they hid something. He drives for several minutes, trying to calm down. The surrounding environment seemed to change as he advanced. The path seemed more winding, and the shadows on the sides of the path seemed thicker and more menacing. The silence of the night was interrupted only by the constant sound of the engine and the car headlights illuminating the road ahead. Finally, Tom saw a lit gas station nearby. With relief mixed with tiredness, park the car and enter the store. The assistant, a man of average age and a tired look, looked at Tom with curiosity when he entered. Tom told me what had happened, describing the men and the oppressive feeling he felt. The assistant listened attentively, his eyes showing a mixture of concern and disbelief. He quickly made a call to the local authorities, and Tom waited nervously, trying not to think about the anxiety that he would return in the evening. While he was waiting, Tom noticed that the store was unsettlingly quiet, with only the occasional sound of a running refrigerator breaking the silence. The sensation of being watched returned, and he looked behind the shelves and between the escapes, trying to see if there was something outside of the common. When he finally reached the police, Tom informed the details of the incident and accompanied the agents to the rest area. The parking lot was empty, and the men left without leaving a trace. The police were quickly blocked, but in the encounter it was clear that they could explain the feeling of discomfort that Tom had experienced. Despite not finding anything bad, the police committed themselves to patrolling the area with greater frequency. Tom, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The experience left a deep hue in his mind. He knew that the true sensation of imminent danger did not come from what he could see clearly, but from what he felt instinctively and inexplicably. Finally, Tom returned to his car and continued his journey, but the sensation of being watched never completely abandoned him. Sometimes he found himself looking back, hoping to see those men or feel that unsettling discomfort again. The experience served as a reminder that even when everything seems peaceful and normal, our perceptions and instincts can alert us to dangers that we cannot explain. Sometimes it's simply that feeling that something is wrong that can keep us safe, even when the situation is not clear. I hope you liked the story, because the third story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories. I hope you liked the story. Have you ever found yourself in one of these situations where, at first glance, everything seems perfectly normal, but for some inexplicable reason, you feel that something is out of place? It's as if the air that surrounds you is charged with heavy energy, as if something invisible has lit up waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Sometimes what seems like a mild illness can turn into something much darker. This uncomfortable sensation happened to a truck driver called Jorge and his co-pilot Miguel. They worked together for years, transporting cargo along the highways of the United States. It was a normal summer night, warm and temp, one of those nights when the asphalt still seemed to exhale the heat of the day. They crossed the state of Arkansas, traveling from east to west, taking a load of household appliances to a store in California. The trip was long and uneventful, with the rural landscape slowly crossing the truck's windows. Along the road, fields, forests, and small deserted villages alternated, creating a feeling of isolation. The main roads were empty, except for some sporadic trucks and buses that circulated in the opposite direction. It was around 3 in the morning when Jorge and Miguel decided to make a stop. He spent hours driving without resting, and the tiredness weighed heavily on his eyes. You will find one of those rest areas that you see in the films, in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense forests and with only a few lighthouses distributed throughout the parking lot. As they approached the rest area, Jorge noticed something strange. I have always been an observant man, and this night seemed different. Maybe it was the exaggerated silence or the shadows that seemed to move at the edges of the forest, but something inside them decided that they should continue advancing. However, the fatigue overcome and ended up parking the truck anyway. The place was completely deserted, with the exception of one of the trucks parked on the corners of the parking lot. The only illumination came from headlights that projected a faint yellow light, creating wide and distorted shadows on the ground. The atmosphere was heavy and the air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if it were filled with something that could not be seen at a glance. Jorge and Miguel got out of the truck, stretched their legs, and took a quick walk around the vehicle. The silence was so profound that every one of his steps echoed on the asphalt. The wind gently shook the surrounding trees, but for the rest there was no sound. It was as if the world around him was asleep, lost in uncomfortable sleep. While Miguel was preparing to get back into the truck, Jorge noticed something in the background of his vision. A shadow, in the best of cases a dark figure, standing at a great distance from them. At first it seemed like just a part of darkness, but then it moved. Jorge looked at the scene, trying to concentrate better, but the figure was too blurry to make out any details. "Did you see that?" he asked Jorge to Miguel, who had his hand at the truck door. ¿Qué es?" Miguel replied, turning to look in the direction Jorge indicated. "Finally, in that direction," Jorge whispered, trying not to appear alarmed. "There is someone there, standing at the edge of the forest." Miguel closed his eyes, trying to see through the darkness, but he was the only one who saw shadows and more shadows. "It's probably just your imagination, man. We're tired, that's all. Let's go in and rest a little." Jorge was doubtful, but I ended up agreeing. Maybe it was just tiredness playing with an old suitcase in his mind. They got on the truck and closed the doors. Miguel settled into the passenger seat and closed his eyes immediately. But Jorge, still restless, remained alert, watching the parking lot in the rearview mirror. The minutes passed slowly. Jorge tried to relax, but his thoughts returned to that figure he had seen before. Did anyone really live there, or was his mind simply tired of him creating shadows where he didn't have them? It was then when I saw it again. The dark figure. Now, he was closer, slowly advancing through the parking lot, as if he had been walking without rumbo but with a hidden intention. Jorge's heart quickened and he felt heat rush across his back. That wasn't normal. Something was very wrong. I read a message to Miguel, who was still half asleep. "Miguel, look at this," whispered Jorge in a tense voice. Miguel opened his eyes and followed Jorge's gaze. This time he also sees himself. The man, as long as he was gone, was now standing next to the truck, walking slowly towards them. He took off a dark hood that covered much of his face, and his movements were strange, almost as if he were floating, sliding across the ground. "What the devil is this?" Miguel murmured. "The sweat has completely disappeared." "Yes, come here." The figure continued to approach, and Jorge, with his fearful hands, tried to start the truck's engine. The engine roared and went out, as if the vehicle itself had stalled due to fear. "Come on, come on," Jorge exclaimed, trying it again. But the engine wouldn't start. Meanwhile, the figure got closer and closer. Its steps were mostly silent, but Jorge and Miguel could feel its presence, like a shadow that was approaching. carrying with it a feeling of imminent danger. Finally, the engine started and Jorge accelerated, but the figure was on the side of the truck, looking out the front window. Miguel jumped on the bench, falling many times on his back. The man's face was partially hidden by his hood, but his eyes were like black men, dull, lifeless. He conveyed a feeling of emptiness, as if my husband's soul was filled with infinite darkness. Miguel grabbed Jorge del brazo. "Get out of here now!" Scream, and Jorge stepped on the accelerator. The truck jolted and started moving. The wheels screeched on the asphalt as they exited the parking lot at full speed. However, while passing the last traffic light, Jorge ventured to look in the rear-view mirror. The figure was still there, standing in the middle of the parking lot, watching as they left. It was as if he was obsessed with them, a disturbing presence that didn't seem willing to let them go. When they finally arrived at the rest area, Jorge and Miguel breathed a sigh of relief, but fear remained present. Whatever it wasn't human, nor was it something they wanted to understand. They continued their journey in silence, both lost in their thoughts, trying to process what had just happened. When they arrived at the next village, Jorge decided that he had to report the incident. He reported it to a local commissioner and told them what happened, but the agents were skeptical. "Probably a vagabond, someone trying to scare drivers," he said. But Jorge knew that was not true. "I saw something in this figure that was not of this world." The days passed and life returned to normal, at least it seemed so. But the rest area incident never left Jorge and Miguel. Every time they passed by another rest area, the feeling of discomfort returned. It was as if that presence followed them, as if the shadow of that encounter was still with them, hidden in the depths of the night. And at night, when Jorge was alone in the cab of his truck, he continued to look in the rearview mirror, hoping to see that hooded figure again, waiting for the moment when the danger he had felt that night would come to claim them again. The path never became the same for Jorge. Every resting area, every dark corner, now seemed filled with invisible threats, shadows that could become reality at any moment. And he always wondered what happened last time if he hadn't managed to escape in time. He knew, deep in his heart, that this night was a warning, a glimpse of something much greater and more terrible that lies at the limits of reality, waiting to manifest itself. As he continued driving along the lonely roads of America, Jorge never stopped feeling the presence of that shadow, always making dreams, always waiting for the right moment to appear again. Tell me which story made your hair stand on end? Tell me which one you liked the most? Because in the next video, the story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories.